I at the outset acknowledge and thank Priscilla for the introductions, Sharon, of course, our close colleague, Peter, and Darren, who I assume you've come the furthest. Welcome to the region. I'm not sure if you've been to Fiji or even the Pacific before, but warm welcome. And of course, last but of course not least, is our regional participants and colleagues. As Sharon said, this forum is taking place at a particularly opportune time with a number of other meetings and reviews of international peace-building architecture taking place through the United Nations. And a component of these meetings includes the role of regional organizations in preventing conflict and promoting peace and security. A key part of these discussions has been on strengthening partnerships between regional organizations and civil society, with your own GPAC network taking a leading role in this debate. Coincidentally, there are also some key reviews being undertaken at the Pacific Islands Forum, and most notably for this meeting are the reviews of the Human Security Framework for the Pacific and the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. Furthermore, from this year, the Pacific will be guided by a new overarching framework, a new overarching policy framework, the Framework for Pacific Regionalism, which replaces the Pacific Plan. So as you can see, there's a lot going on, both in our region and internationally, in the realm of peace, conflict, and sustainable development, which provides opportunities to reflect on lessons learned and identify priorities for action to ensure a peaceful, secure, and prosperous Pacific. But before discussing the implications of these activities, I want to start by outlining the existing regional architecture for conflict prevention at the Pacific Islands Forum, and Sharon's already made some references to these. The responsibility for issues of conflict prevention and security within the Pacific Islands Forum sits primarily within the Forum Regional Security Committee, which we will be meeting on Wednesday and Thursday this week. And this committee was established under the 1992 Honiara Declaration, which marked the first formal collective effort to combat transnational crime through the coordination of legislative initiatives and information sharing between law enforcement officials and agencies. Despite this focus on law enforcement, early meetings of the FRC continue to note the broad security issues impacting the region. This led to the establishment of the Aitutaki Declaration in 1997, which embraced a more comprehensive approach to regional security and also acknowledged that existing security arrangements had not provided explicit mechanisms to facilitate consultations that would enable members to promptly and effectively respond to security threats in the region. Therefore, this was the first step towards the forum contemplating preventive diplomacy mechanisms. This move towards institutionalizing preventive diplomacy and conflict prevention at the forum became critical following the events of 2000 in both Fiji and Solomon Islands. The response by leaders to these two events was the October 2000 Bikatawa Declaration, which committed the forum collectively to addressing difficult and sensitive issues, including the underlying causes of tensions and conflict. The Bikatawa Declaration remains the cornerstone of the forum's collective action to prevent and respond to conflict in the region. This declaration has been invoked in response to three security concerns in the region: the Solomon Islands, which led to the implementation of the Regional Assistance Mission to the Solomon Islands, more commonly known as RAMSI, and which is now in its 11th year; Nauru, which led to the Pacific Regional Assistance to Nauru Initiative; and Fiji, following the 2000 coup, which included the establishment of a ministerial contact group and the suspension of Fiji's participation in forum meetings and activities. I won't discuss these in any further detail, but I do wish to acknowledge that each initiative has been both lauded and criticized. However, in general, an effective policy framework for regional conflict prevention and response is in place. The challenge has been, and continues to be, ensuring the institutional capacity for operationalizing the policy in a timely and effective manner. More specifically, some of the challenges for conflict prevention under the Bikatawa include the tension between national sovereignty and collective regional action, a lack of a clear data collection and sharing mechanism for conflict prevention, Ensuring actions are also aimed at addressing the root causes of conflict, and inclusion of non-state actors in conflict prevention processes. This latter challenge of building partnerships for conflict prevention is something that I hope you will consider in your deliberations over the next few days. Since the Bikatau Declaration, there have been other frameworks developed, most notably the Human Security Framework for the Pacific and the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, that in many ways aim to overcome some of these challenges and complement the Bikatau Declaration. The Human Security Framework for the Pacific was developed after a long process of considering the efficacy and relevance of an early warning and response mechanisms at the forum. In short, the framework aims to guide countries in considering the causes and triggers of conflict through a human security lens under three pillars. Firstly, addressing the causes of conflict. Secondly, monitoring conflict escalation. And thirdly, strengthening the conflict resolution mechanisms. Forum member countries and civil society were invited to submit comments on the framework early this year. The feedback received was that whilst the concept of human security is considered to be important for framing security issues in the region, the framework itself has offered little practical support in terms of conflict prevention and policy development. Gender and security issues continue to be of importance to the Forum, and earlier this year, Forum member countries and civil society were also invited to submit feedback on the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. The comments received suggested that whilst the RAP has been useful as an advocacy tool to encourage greater awareness amongst the region's policymakers and civil society of UNSCR 1325, and it provided clear guidance on activities for implementing 1325, its focus on conflict-affected states was seen to limit its relevance to only a few countries and organizations in the region. Therefore, it was suggested that any WPS agenda needed to more effectively reflect national and regional priorities in order to have a broader appeal, and that this could be facilitated by aligning the WPS with the Forum Leaders' Gender Equality Declaration. So in short, while the policy framework for conflict prevention at the Forum provides sufficient support for collective action at the regional level, turning these policies into action continues to present important challenges. As I said at the beginning of my remarks, the range of current global and regional discussions on peace and conflict provides an opportune time for deepening our reflections and conversations on regional approaches to conflict prevention. Finally, I want to turn now to locating the preceding discussion within the framework for Pacific regionalism, which, as I said, is the new overarching policy framework for the Pacific Islands Forum. Most importantly, the framework outlines a new process for setting regional priorities requiring the attention of political leaders. The framework is intended to support focused political conversations and settlements that address key strategic issues including shared sovereignty, pooling resources, and delegated decision-making. Rather than providing a list of regional priorities, as the previous Pacific Plan did, it sets out a robust process through which regional priorities will be identified and implemented. Importantly, the framework recognizes that if the process is to be successful, it will require the support, commitment, and ownership of all Pacific people, including governments and administrations, civil society organizations, private sector representatives, regional organizations, development partners, media, and other key stakeholders. An example of this move towards greater inclusion in setting the regional policy agenda is that under the framework, anybody can submit an initiative for leaders' consideration. So what does this mean for peace and conflict issues in the region and for civil society participation in the policy process? Firstly, as I just stated, the framework promotes inclusive policy development, ensuring diversity in policy development, implementation, and monitoring. As an example, the Specialist Subcommittee on Regionalism, which will assess priorities to be referred to leaders, is not limited to government representatives. This emphasis on inclusiveness is consistent with the call by the GPAC Executive Director recently in New York to strengthen collaboration between regional organizations and civil society on issues of peace and security. Furthermore, we can seek to apply the key lessons identified by the Executive Director in his speech, which included ensuring collaboration is structured and regular, that trust is established and maintained, and that ample space and opportunities are provided for information exchange. In addition to greater inclusion under the framework for Pacific regionalism, the Forum Secretariat is also implementing an EU-funded project aimed at strengthening PIF's CSO engagement across the organization. The key components of the project include formalizing engagement through a jointly developed formal strategy, capacity building for regional civil society organizations to better engage in policy dialogue, and a grant scheme to support CSO networking and policy dialogue activities. So while the framework and the project both support the Forum in deepening democracy by being more inclusive, the PIF CSO engagement project in a way supports regional CSOs to become more democratic and inclusive themselves, thereby ensuring truly inclusive policy dialogue and implementation. A second consideration regarding the framework for Pacific regionalism is that peace and conflict issues may be submitted as standalone initiatives or indeed as an integral part of other proposals. At a recent PIF's workshop on conflict prevention, which included both government officials and civil society representatives, a number of suggestions were put forward as possible peace and security initiatives that could be submitted under the framework process. These included establishing formal capacity at PIFs for undertaking conflict mediation, the development of a regional court of appeal, and the establishment of a regional human rights mechanism. The framework emphasizes deepening regionalism, in particular through regional integration. So in considering possibilities for conflict prevention under the framework, one should properly consider what is truly regional about conflict prevention. At the recent Interregional Conference on Strengthening Peace and Security for Democracy and Development, held in Vienna, it was reaffirmed that regional organizations do have a role in preventing conflict. One suggested reason for this is because conflicts can spill over into neighboring countries. This is less of a problem in our region, given our geography. However, there are also certain factors contributing to conflict that are not confined to national boundaries, including migration and displacement, illicit arms flow, and transnational crime. Furthermore, an often neglected part of the discussions concerns the values and principles to which a regional community like the Pacific Islands Forum holds itself accountable. Indeed, both the framework for Pacific regionalism and the first section of the Bikatawa Declaration are precisely a statement of values and principles that Pacific Island leaders believe are vital to maintaining peace and security in the region. The remainder of the Bikatawa Declaration outlines a mechanism for taking collective action when those values and principles are under threat. So perhaps the key task for conflict prevention under the framework is ensuring that values and principles truly permeate all initiatives. In any case, the question to be asked is what might be a game-changing initiative that will contribute to the leader's vision of a region of peace, harmony, security, social inclusion, and prosperity, so that all our Pacific people can lead free, healthy, and productive lives. So, as a regional grouping of civil society organizations with expertise in conflict prevention, I encourage you to consider over the next couple of days what the priorities for conflict prevention at the regional level might be, as well as possible strategies for strengthening partnerships for conflict prevention that are inclusive of PIFs, civil society, and the private sector. Thank you very much.